There are wounds that don't show on the skin, but they change the way we love, the way we trust, and sometimes the way we live. Today, we're going to dive into a true story, not to judge, but to understand, not to reopen the pain, but to shine a light on healing. Lucas is a 31-year-old software engineer living in Seattle. He lives alone in a small apartment overlooking the harbor, where he brews his morning coffee and watches the fog drift across the water. People generally think Lucas has it together. He shows up to work on time, earns a good living, speaks softly, and has never missed a team meeting. But those who truly know him, which truthfully aren't many, understand that Lucas avoids anything personal: birthdays, Christmas, even co-workers' farewell parties. On his 31st birthday, Lucas worked until 10 p.m. No one at the office remembered. He didn't mention it either. On the way home, he stopped by a 24-hour convenience store and bought a small heart-shaped cake, not because he likes sweets, but because it reminded him of his 8th birthday, the last time his mom remembered the day. Lucas grew up in a chaotic household, a single mother, a revolving door of boyfriends, and hardly anyone who stayed. He learned early on to live quietly so he wouldn't be a burden. He was always obedient, never asked for anything, never complained, never showed anger, because whenever he did, his mom would go silent for days or leave overnight without a word. When he was 8, Lucas made a drawing of the two of them cutting a birthday cake. But on that day, his mom went out with her new boyfriend, leaving him home alone. The little boy sat by the window all afternoon, clutching the drawing and refusing to cry, as if, by not expressing sadness, he could pretend it wasn't real. Since then, Lucas has never spoken about birthdays, not because he hates them, but because they remind him, if I expect something, I'll be disappointed, and if I feel sad, no one will care. Years later, Lucas is everything people say they want: a good job, financial freedom, a beautiful apartment. But deep down, he doesn't let anyone truly get close, because he carries a quiet belief: if someone really sees who I am, they'll leave just like my mom did. A clinical case of an adult who doesn't want to bother anyone. Lucas, 31, male, a software engineer living in Seattle, is the kind of person who seems totally fine on the surface. Independent, polite, reserved, and always emotionally composed. But this very fineness is often the first red flag, a subtle form of emotional defense commonly seen in individuals who, from a young age, learned that emotional needs were not welcome. 1. Avoidance of intimacy, the outward expression of an unhealed attachment wound. In daily life, Lucas avoids any situation that requires deep emotional connection. He skips office parties, avoids personal conversations with coworkers, and never shares details about his private life. When asked about his family, he gives vague answers and quickly changes the subject, especially around birthdays. He never brings them up and seems totally okay with that. But beneath the so-called ease is a deeply rooted fear. If I show that I want to be cared for, I'll be let down. If I get close to someone, they might leave me just like before. Lucas doesn't avoid intimacy because he dislikes people. He avoids it because he learned that connection is dangerous. The early trauma of an inconsistent mother, who repeatedly abandoned him during meaningful moments, shaped a core belief: the ones I love will always choose someone else over me. 2. Emotional numbness, not because there are no feelings, but because it's never been safe to express them. Lucas cannot clearly articulate his feelings. In therapy, if asked, "How did you feel when no one remembered your birthday?" he would likely respond with something like, "It was fine. Honestly, I didn't think much of it." This is a textbook example of emotional detachment, a survival mechanism where the nervous system disconnects emotions from experiences to prevent overwhelm. Children cannot regulate their emotions without the co-regulation of a present adult. Lacking this, kids like Lucas learn to switch off emotions to survive, not to live fully. And so, in adulthood, they no longer recognize sadness, loneliness, or anger. They only know, I should stay quiet and keep working. 3. Chronic underlying stress, even when everything appears stable on the surface. 3. Chronic underlying stress, even when everything appears stable on the surface. He struggles with sleep, often waking up in the middle of the night without knowing why. He habitually overworks, using it as a way to avoid feeling. Even when he achieves something meaningful, he doesn't feel joy, only emptiness or fear of future failure. These are signs of a freeze response, a nervous system survival mode where the body, unable to fight or flee, shuts down emotionally. Lucas isn't running or fighting. He's numbing out, wrapped in the persona of someone who normalizes everything. 4. Long-term consequence, isolation and inability to form safe emotional bonds. Lucas has no truly close relationships. He's had a few short-term romances, but once feelings grow deeper, he pulls away, not because he doesn't want connection, but because he's afraid he'll want it too much, only to be abandoned again. The tragic irony is that his withdrawal causes others to see him as emotionally unavailable or unwilling to commit, and they leave, which only further reinforces Lucas's original belief. No one stays. No one truly chooses me. This is the self-fulfilling cycle of unhealed emotional wounds. Faulty belief, defensive behavior, negative result, belief reinforced. 5. Core wound. I'm not important enough to be remembered. The story of no one remembering his birthday might seem trivial to outsiders, but to Lucas, it triggers a deeply embedded memory of being a child left alone on his birthday with a handmade gift no one received. In his subconscious, birthdays became a reminder, I am not worthy of love. So he learned to preemptively not need anyone, just to avoid being hurt again. Lucas is not clinically depressed. He still smiles, works, and functions socially. And that's exactly why his wounds are hard to see, and even harder to heal. He doesn't need to be saved. He needs to be seen. Defense mechanisms and core beliefs formed in Lucas. Lucas did not choose to be closed off, emotionally distant, or self-sufficient. He did not choose to hide his feelings or live in loneliness. These are not personality traits. They are sophisticated survival strategies developed over time, shaped by an emotionally unsafe environment during his early developmental years. To truly understand someone like Lucas, we must set aside binary moral frameworks like right versus wrong or strong versus weak, and instead view his present behaviors as the logical consequences of a belief system designed to protect him from further emotional harm. 1. Primary defense mechanism, avoidant attachment. One of Lucas's most noticeable traits is his avoidance of emotionally intimate situations. This is a hallmark of avoidant attachment, often found in individuals whose emotional needs were inconsistently met or outright dismissed by caregivers in childhood. Lucas was raised by an emotionally unstable and unpredictable mother who withdrew whenever he sought closeness. When a child is repeatedly rejected emotionally, they internalize a conclusion. It's safer not to need anyone, because needing leads to pain. As a result, Lucas learned to self-regulate in a harmful way, cutting off needs, locking away feelings, and convincing himself he didn't require others. This survival pattern persists strongly in adulthood. He feels uneasy when others express strong emotions toward him. He grows anxious when someone starts getting close. And when emotional intimacy begins to form, he pulls away, citing work, fatigue, or simply saying, I'm not ready. But beneath the surface, what's really happening is fear, not of others, but the vulnerability that comes from trusting. 2. Secondary defense, emotional numbing. Lucas rarely cries. He doesn't get angry. In his emotional vocabulary, everything is fine, not a big deal, or manageable. But this is not natural calmness. It's the result of emotional shutdown. His nervous system learned over time that there was no one available to co-regulate his emotions. So it adapted by turning the system off entirely to avoid emotional overload. Emotional numbness helped Lucas survive the lonely days of childhood. Like the night he lit a birthday candle alone, didn't cry, and didn't bother anyone. But as an adult, this mechanism becomes a prison. He loses access to deep joy. He doesn't feel real sadness. And he forgets how to simply be with himself during fragile moments. Emotional flatness is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of a nervous system stuck in freeze mode. 4. Core beliefs imprinted in Lucas's subconscious. Core beliefs are deep-rooted conclusions we form based on early emotional experiences, especially those that are intense, repeated, or invalidated. In Lucas, at least 3 unconscious beliefs seem to be driving his behavior. I'm not important enough to be prioritized. As a result, he avoids expecting people to remember him, avoids asking for attention, and retreats when someone begins to show interest. If people see the real me, they'll leave. He maintains an image of being fine, self-sufficient, and low maintenance because needing someone feels like a vulnerability too dangerous to reveal. I'm not allowed to express negative emotions. So he buries sadness, anger, disappointment, transforming them into silence, overwork, or reluctance to form deeper bonds. The crucial thing is, these beliefs do not appear as conscious thoughts. They are not heard inside the mind. They operate like invisible scripts, shaping how he sees others, sees the world, and sees himself. 5. Final reflection. Defense is not weakness. It's evidence of survival. All of Lucas's defense mechanisms and core beliefs are not abnormal responses. They are highly adaptive survival strategies formed by a child in an emotionally unsupported environment. In therapy, the goal is not to destroy these defenses, but to help the client see. These strategies once kept you safe, but they no longer serve your present life. Lucas doesn't need to keep holding himself together so tightly. He can begin to be present with his feelings, to connect safely with others, and to understand that he is worthy of love. Not because he's good at surviving, but because he is human. In clinical practice, individuals like Lucas, outwardly stable, calm, high-functioning, often belong to the group of clients who are the hardest to access, not because they aren't carrying wounds, but because their defense mechanisms are socially rewarded. Hardworking, low maintenance, logical, independent. And yet, underneath this quiet competence lies a persistent emptiness, a fatigue even they cannot explain. Don't start with trauma, start with safety. Therapy for this client type should not begin with exploring childhood trauma or digging into repressed emotions. The first and most critical task is to create a neurologically safe space where they are not interrogated, not pushed to open up, and not labeled as someone with problems. In early sessions, someone like Lucas may say very little. He might talk about work, the weather, or small, surface-level anecdotes. And that's okay. The therapist should not rush to steer the conversation toward anything deeper. The key is to meet the client exactly where they are and honor that readiness. Sometimes, a single neutral observation can serve as an emotional entry point. It seems like you work really hard to make sure no one ever feels burdened by you. This isn't confrontation. It's gentle attunement. The body knows first, access emotions through somatic cues. For clients like Lucas, who are disconnected from their feelings, emotional awareness often begins with noticing physical responses, not naming emotions. For instance, when you said that, "I noticed your shoulders pulled in just slightly. Did you feel that too?" This kind of reflection helps reawaken frozen emotional systems, slowly and without threat. It's not about pushing the client to feel more, but about helping them notice what their body already knows. Therapy should be a safe relationship, not a fix-it session. Instead of jumping to insights or interventions, therapy should focus on relational experience. Being listened to without being corrected, being present without being pressured, being accepted without needing to perform. When clients like Lucas feel this kind of safety, a new belief can slowly take root. Maybe there can be a relationship where I don't have to work so hard just to be worthy of staying. This isn't theoretical. It's felt in the therapist's tone, pace, and consistency. Tools should be introduced gently, not prescribed rigidly. Mindfulness practices, emotional journaling, or somatic therapies, such as breath awareness or body scans, can be introduced, but only as the client feels ready. Forcing tools too soon, especially with avoidantly attached clients, can trigger retreat rather than healing. The goal is not to make emotions show up faster. It's to help the nervous system feel safe enough that those emotions no longer need to hide. Conclusion: from inner survival to emotional presence. Therapy with someone like Lucas is not about speed. It's about steadiness. It's a slow, delicate transition from emotional survival to emotional presence. It requires patience. It requires restraint. And above all, it requires kindness. But the transformation, when it happens, is profound. Because once Lucas realizes he can be exactly who he is, without being left, the healing doesn't begin in theory. It begins in relationship. Revisiting an old wound from a compassionate lens. Throughout today's session, we've explored the emotional journey of someone carrying an attachment wound, not to judge and not to analyze them like a case, but to recognize a deeply human truth. Behind every defense mechanism is a longing to be loved, to be held, to feel safe. Now, it's time to turn inward. Today's exercise: choose an old wound and try to revisit it from a different angle, not from the perspective of the one who was hurt, not from the narrator's voice, but from the viewpoint of a compassionate observer, someone who simply wants to understand, not to fix. Step 1. Choose a past experience that caused you pain. It doesn't have to be a major trauma or a dramatic event. Sometimes it's something as small as being ignored, being compared to someone else, or having an important moment go unnoticed, and yet it still lingers. Let your memory choose for you. Don't force yourself to pick the biggest one. Just choose something that still feels uncomfortable when you think about it, or something you still tend to avoid. Step 2. Reframe the story from a neutral, observing perspective. Imagine you're a third person watching the scene unfold. You're not taking sides. You're not judging. You're simply noticing. Example: a 10-year-old child brings home a test with an A grade. They're excited to share it. When the mother looks at it, she says, "Why not an A+?" The child goes quiet. That night, they don't mention school again. This exercise helps you separate emotion from subjective language, like, "I felt hurt," and instead observe what actually happened as a sequence of behaviors. It allows your nervous system to step out of defense mode and into grounded awareness. Step 3. Name the beliefs that took root afterward. After that experience, what did you come to believe about yourself, about others, about the world? Write it down without filtering or judging. Let the beliefs surface, just as they are. You don't need to fix them, only to name them. Examples: I believe I'm only lovable when I'm perfect. I believe no one truly sees my worth. I believe if I express emotions, I'll be mocked or abandoned. This is about awareness, not correction, because healing begins when truth is gently spoken, even if it's messy, even if it's painful. Step 4. Whisper to yourself a neutral but compassionate response. Finally, write a gentle sentence to your younger self, one that doesn't deny the pain, doesn't sugarcoat the past, but allows you to look back with the perspective of someone who has grown. Examples: I really tried that day. It wasn't my fault that they didn't see what I needed. I wasn't wrong for hoping. Let this be a quiet offering, not to erase the wound, but to soften the weight it left behind. Just one small, kind sentence spoken from you to you. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about looking back without needing to turn away. We've all been trying, in our own way. Thank you for staying with us until the end of today's video. A space where we didn't just listen to a story, but gently stepped into the deeper act of listening to ourselves. Maybe in Lucas, you saw a reflection of yourself. Someone who once believed that if you didn't ask for too much, if you were strong enough, quiet enough, you'd be loved and never left behind. But the truth is, we don't have to deny our emotional needs to deserve someone's presence. Through each part of today's video, from emotional exploration to defense mechanisms, to the potential path of therapy, one thing became clear. It's not that Lucas needs to be fixed. It's that Lucas deserves to be understood exactly as he is, without needing to try harder. And the same is true for you. If there's only one thing you take with you after this video, let it be this. No one has to carry their wounds alone forever. You can start by writing something down, naming what hurts, or simply sitting with your sadness and whispering to yourself, "Today I was just a little braver than yesterday." In the next video, we'll arrive at the final part of this journey. Day 5, integration and action. We don't have to heal alone. It will be a special day, one where you'll no longer feel alone, and where the first steps to turn insight into practice will begin to unfold. If today's video resonated with something inside you, feel free to leave a comment, a question, a story, or even just a single dot. We read them all, and we're here. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the final episode of this series. Thank you for staying, for listening, and for choosing to come home to yourself.